Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project. This is the show where I'm teaching my kids how to be successful, and I'm sharing that journey along with you so that you can learn along with them, no matter what your age is. And this is a special episode today. We'll do this every once in a while I'm sitting down with my kids. We're here at my house right now in my home office, and my children are here with me. Say hello, my children.
Hola.
Hi.
Hi.
And just to remind everyone who my children are, because they are all amazing, please introduce yourselves, oldest to youngest.
I am Stratton.
And how old are you, Stratton?
I am 17.
All right.
And my name is Ella. I am 13.
I am Darcy, and I am 10 years old.
All right. So what I'd like to do is choose a topic, something that we can explore that maybe came from one of the other interviews that I've had. And recently I was in Dallas and had a great interview with a couple of former clients of mine, Sam Zarabi and Yahya Mansour, who are very successful entrepreneurs. And during that interview, the principle of follow-through came up. And so I asked my kids over the last week to think about follow-through and come up with questions to ask me so that we can discuss it. Earlier in the week, Darcy asked me a question. Darcy, why don't you go ahead and ask me that question again?
I asked you, what exactly is follow-through?
Yeah, it's probably something you don't hear very much in elementary school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your teacher doesn't say, you guys need to have better follow-through. So here's what follow-through is all about. It means that you do what you said you would do by the time that you said you would do it. So, Darcy, the example I gave you was that if you tell Mom you're going to clean your room tonight by the end of day, then that means you should clean your room by tonight at the end of day. And I am amazed, as long as I've been in my career and coaching people and working with leaders and successful people, I believe that the first rule of success is to have good follow through. And the first rule of success is to do what you said you would do by the time you said you would do it. That's it. I have worked with lots of people who maybe if you just looked at them on paper, maybe they're not the smartest, maybe they weren't the best in college or school and they didn't get the best grades, and yet they're highly successful simply because they show up and do what's expected of them on time. So I wanted to kind of talk with my kids about that and explore ways that we can do a better job of that and make sure that their follow through in life is consistent. So who wants to kick us off with a question about follow through?
Why is following through so difficult sometimes?
Yeah. Well, let me turn this back to you with a question. Have there been times when you didn't follow through?
Yeah, there have been times.
Okay. Right. Because you're a human being, right? And we don't follow through all the time. So if you can think of one specific time, what kept you from following through, Ella?
Mostly, I just wanted to do nothing. I wanted to be lazy and just go through my day without actually doing what needed to be done.
Okay. And that's pretty common. And what you're talking about is a form of procrastination, right? And that's where you let your emotions in the moment get in the way of what it is that you're supposed to do. So let's talk about that for a second, just the emotional side of procrastination. And part of the problem is, Ella, when we think about doing a task, we think about all the work that's involved in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're thinking about, let's say school, you're thinking about a paper that needs to be written and it's 300 pages or whatever it is the teacher wants you to do, right? And so you're thinking about all of that work all at once, and you're feeling the emotional impact of all of that at the same time in your brain. And that's overwhelming. That's overwhelming for anybody. And no one wants to do anything with that because we go, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever. So one of the tricks that I teach in my courses in LinkedIn Learning, and I've taught to my clients, is to focus on the timing of emotion. and ignore the emotion you feel just before you do it. So let me give you an example with that, Ella. Do you remember what it is that was something that you put off on that day, or?
Mostly writing.
Okay.
I made a deadline for myself to finish one of my drafts, and I didn't care to do it at all.
Okay. And that was because you were feeling overwhelmed by the work to do it, right? Okay. So let's go into that concept of timing of emotion. When you think about the idea of completing that book, you feel good.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, man, that will be amazing when it's done. So when you first have a vision of the task, you feel good. And when you're working on it, when you're in the middle of working on it, it's not bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel good. You're like, I'm being productive. I'm doing the work. And when you complete it, you feel really good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you feel good when you're thinking about it. You feel good when you're doing it, and you feel great when you're done with it. But just before you start doing it, how do you feel?
Absolutely unmotivated.
Exactly. You feel, this is too hard. So one of the things that I teach people to do is ignore the emotion that you feel just before it's time to do it. Just don't acknowledge it. Don't allow it to sink in. Just go, I don't care how I feel just before I do it. I'm just going to start. And once you start, everything starts getting better. Now, there's a second trick to that, which is if you schedule something in your calendar or it comes time to do it, you schedule the first minute of activity. So in the case of your example, Ella, of writing all this stuff, what's the first minute, the first 60 seconds? What do you need to do in that first 60 seconds to start writing?
I sit down on my computer and I pull up my writing playlist as well as the document.
Okay, that's it. So when you schedule it in the calendar, which maybe you're not doing that so much. Stratton, I know that you've started to learn how to do that, right?
Yeah.
And Darcy, you're going to start doing that. And by the way, anyone listening to this, I would encourage you to use your calendar. Your calendar is critical for everything. So Ella, when you schedule the time to do that in your calendar, at the beginning of it, you say, open up my writing playlist and sit down at my computer. And then if you want to put a dash after that, you say, work on writing my book. So now when you look at it in your calendar, the only emotion that you're trying to deal with is just the frustration of sitting down and opening up your computer. That's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
That's not overwhelming. So if you see that, your brain goes, all right, I can do that. And the next thing you know, you've tricked yourself to get past that point of feeling emotion just before you start doing work.
Yeah.
Nice little trick, huh?
Yeah, that's super cool.
Okay, great. Stratton, you got a question you want to discuss about follow-through?
Yeah. What do you do when you find yourself not following through?
Okay, so we're now past the point. We're not procrastinating. It just happened.
Yes.
What's the most likely situation in which you didn't follow through, Stratton? What's a thing that keeps you from doing it?
Something came up during the day around the same time, or I was feeling down that day, or I just intentionally did not do it.
Okay, so it didn't happen, and now we're trying to correct the fact that it didn't happen.
Yes.
Right? The first thing that I would do is I would look at, you gave several reasons why it couldn't happen. So I would make a note to myself to review later to say, figure out why I didn't follow through. Take a look at what happened. So part of my coaching and training is I help people look at things systemically, meaning what was the process, the system that led to that event occurring, and then we try to fix it. We try to come up with a new system that makes sure that that doesn't happen, or at least reduces the odds that it happened. Now, I'll pause for a second and say this. If it's something really weird, like we got a weather pattern that dumped 5 feet of snow on our house in Utah, and it completely changed our schedule, and we had to do all these things to correct it. If it only happens once, it's an incident. And in most cases, we can ignore an incident. If it happens more than once, then it's a pattern. It means that here's something that's occurring regularly. whether it was you were behind in your schedule or you felt sick or something like that. There's a pattern there. So we're going to want to address that pattern at some point, and we're going to say, how do we keep this from happening again? How do we eat better? How do we sleep better? How do we change things in our day and our life to reduce the likelihood that this pattern occurs? Because if you just keep plowing ahead and accepting that sort of thing is going to happen, you'll never break the cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so now what we need to do is reevaluate and look at our calendar and recommit to the thing, that whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Also, as part of that, if other people were let down because of it, because they were depending on you to have great follow-through, then you're going to have to talk with them and say, this is what happened. I apologize. Here's the new date.
Okay.
You've got to negotiate those things with people. Another thing that I would say is a lot of times I see this, and you kind of hinted at it. I see this occur when people try to do too much in the same period of time. They're trying to do too much in their day, and so they're overcommitted. So one of the things I teach in my time management courses is leave buffer in your schedule. You do not want a schedule that has everything packed back to back to back. 1 hour here and then no break in between and 1 hour there. And then you're just jumping from thing to thing. You will always fail with a schedule like that because we live in a world where interruptions are going to happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
Unexpected things come in. It's too easy for people to reach you through phone or other methods. You are going to be interrupted. You are going to lose time. So leave a little space between things. Rather than scheduling 1 hour appointments, schedule 50-minute appointments. Rather than scheduling 8 hours of activity in an 8-hour day, schedule 6.5 or something like that. So there's a little room to breathe, and you use that as realistic room to compensate for the things that are going on.
Yeah.
Are there other specific questions around that situation, Stratton, that I didn't address?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, and let's just talk briefly too, because I know, and you're okay with talking about it. Let's just talk for a second about ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you've had to deal with. Now, you are doing far, far better than you were doing 3 to 4 years ago.
Yeah.
With that.
Definitely.
And so, again, going back to that, is it an incident or is it a pattern? Part of what you've done and part of what we helped you do is we address that pattern of behavior that was being caused by ADHD. And there are things that you can do in terms of therapy, or even if necessary, do in terms of medication. And that will help you break that pattern so that you can follow through. But what you've learned is that just getting therapy or just getting medication doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
Right? All it does is it gives you the capacity to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I think the older you get, the more and more mature you're going to become, the more your brain's going to settle down, and the easier this is going to become to deal with those kinds of things that you run into on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and I've tried to structure my work so that it's either after I do a physical activity, because exercising tends to help me focus afterwards. And when I do work, I like listening to kind of chill music with no words, just kind of quiet in the background. It keeps me from, there's something about silence that kind of drives me crazy while I'm working. And then
I can understand
yeah,
that.
oh man, I can't do that. And then, I think what works for me is I'll work for an hour straight and I'll take a 30-minute break, do something I want, and go back to working, and it's like a refresh, and I can just keep doing that over and over.
Yeah, well, and you're bringing up a great point, which is in my book, The Power of Having Fun, right? Which is you need to have breaks in your day. We talked a little bit with Ella's question about procrastination, putting things off because of the emotion. Well, if you never feel that there's any point in your day where you're going to take a break, procrastination becomes much more difficult to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Because now it's like, well, I have to take a break because I feel exhausted. But if you can count on it happening at 4:30, say, and you're going to go play a video game at 4:30, you can count on it. So that's going to allow you to push forward, at 3 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Darcy, let me turn it to you. Is there another question that you have about follow through?
Yes. So let's say you said that you were going to follow through and you were going to do something, but you know you weren't going to do it. What happens then?
So you told someone or you told yourself that you were going to do something, but really when you said it, you knew that you weren't going to do it anyway?
Yeah.
Okay. So I run into this at work sometimes with, here's an everyday example that someone listening to this can relate to. You meet someone, you say, hey, it's great to see you. We should get together sometime. Or the phrase that sometimes people will use is, let's pencil something into the calendar. It's such a funny phrase, first of all, because no one uses a written calendar anymore. But second, because pencil implies what?
You can erase it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
You can erase it if things don't work out. So you're not committing to anything. You're just saying, well, it would be nice someday if we did this together. And my assistant, Victoria, and I do this as well, but she knows that if someone says something like that, let's see if we can make it work, or let's pencil this in, she'll respond and say, what is a time that you know you'll be able to commit to? Let's really think about this and make a choice. So, Darcy, to go to your question, I would say, don't tell anyone or even yourself that you're going to do something unless you really mean it. You want to really be sure that when you put something in the calendar, you're making a commitment. And that's how I view my calendar. When I put something in, I'm committing to myself or someone else that I'm going to do it. And again, unless something unexpected happens that I cannot control, like getting sick or something like that, I always keep that commitment.
Okay, but how can I?
Well, first thing is you want to start with making sure that you are committed to keeping your word, right? Yeah. So you start thinking carefully about the words that you use, and you say, I'm not going to tell Mom that I'm going to clean my room unless I really, really mean it. And what happens is people start to learn that they can depend on you because you don't just say yes to everything. And that brings up another principle of focus, which is whenever you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So if I'm going to say yes to doing this interview with all of you, right? What am I saying no to? We're doing this unusually on Saturday. I typically don't work on a Saturday, and so, but this is the only time that we can all get together to do this, right? So I had to make an internal commitment to myself that I was saying no to being lazy on Saturday morning, which is what I would prefer to do. I thought, this is worth it. It's great for us to have these moments to build our relationship, and it's worth it for me to make this investment in you. So I'm committed to it, and I put it in my calendar. No matter what your career is, your foundation of success begins with one thing: effective time management. And thanks to the generosity of Microsoft, you can get my entire course, Time Management Fundamentals, for free on LinkedIn Learning. Go to davegift.com to get your free access now. This is the course that millions around the world have used to become more productive and reduce stress. Everyone from Fortune 500 executives to freelancers to students. Now, it's the same coaching I've provided in person for tens of thousands of dollars per day, but you can get it for free on LinkedIn Learning. You don't need to provide anything to access it. No credit card, no email. Just go to davegift.com and start learning. Thank you so much, Microsoft and LinkedIn Learning, for your partnership. davegift.com.
I think maybe sometime I'll be able to try that and actually make sure that I'm going to commit to it and follow through.
Yep. The more you get in the habit of saying, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to commit to it, then you're going to get better and better at it. A big part of follow through too, we've talked about, the importance of doing what you said you do by the time you said you do it. But this is about building relationships with people, right? Think about it at work. If you're someone, let's take the negative side first. If you're someone at work who says, oh yeah, I'll take care of that. Oh, I'll do that, right? And then a week later you didn't do it. You're, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't do that. But I will do it this week, I promise, right? If you do that over and over and over with the people you work with, what happens to their relationship with you?
They're not going to trust you anymore.
Right. You start to erode that foundation. And what that does in the long term is that is going to reduce the opportunities that you have. It's going to reduce the likelihood, if you're working for a company, to reduce the likelihood that you're going to get promoted because you have a reputation of not following through. But let's take the positive side. Rather than just saying, hey, I'm going to do that, and then you don't do it, you say, let me really think about that for a second. And it's okay to not say yes in the moment, right? It's okay to say, let me think about that. Let me look at my calendar, and then I'm going to get back to you by the end of day, which is a commitment in and of itself, right? But you say, you're buying yourself a little time, and then you say, okay, I looked at my calendar, and I can get this done by this date. Will that work for you? And then you do it. People are okay with that. Even if it's a little bit further than what they were hoping, maybe it takes a little longer than they were hoping, they're okay most of the time of waiting just a little bit more if they know that you can keep your word. That just happened with a speaking event. A company hired me to come speak to them. They wanted me to get my slides to them on a certain date. I said, I know I have a commitment prior to that, but I can get it to you the next day. I have time on my calendar to work on it. And they were like, okay, great. Thank you. And not only did I get it to them, but while I'm getting it to them, I'm building relationships that they can say, wow, we can count on this guy to keep his word and do a professional job when he comes to our event.
So along with knowing when to say no, when do I know when to make a commitment? Because sometimes I am afraid of saying no to something and then missing an experiment and feeling guilty about it.
Okay. Are we talking about FOMO here? Are we talking about fear of missing out? Or are we talking about something else?
Fear of missing out.
Okay. The first thing I would say is accept the fact that you are going to miss out sometimes.
Okay.
And be okay with that. It's okay to not take every opportunity. In fact, I encourage you to not take every opportunity. So part of this issue is you're going to have to internally get okay with the idea that sometimes you won't be able to participate in everything. And accept it without too much regret.
Okay.
Because, again, going back to that principle, saying yes to one thing means saying no to something else. And anytime you say no to something else, what does that mean? You're going to miss out on whatever it is. So this is a great question, Ella. I love it. And the real question you want to ask yourself is, what are the things that I cannot miss out on? What are the things that are most valuable that I absolutely want to make a priority? So right now, I know that you're working on being a writer. You're very prolific already in your writing, right?
Yeah.
And that's something you want to pursue in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally, you're going to have opportunities that maybe one of them is going to be part of something that's writing related, and the other one that you're having a choice between is not writing related. Okay? And I'm not saying you never should go do something fun or something else, but I'm just saying if it's so divergent from what you're trying to create in your life and in your career, you say yes to the writing opportunity and no to the other thing.
Okay.
Right?
I've never really thought of it that way.
Yeah. It's always a choice of value. That's what I teach people to do, is to focus on your most valuable activity, your most valuable work, what is worth, in terms of a work context, what is worth the most per hour. Because if you can raise your value per hour, you're going to give yourself freedom. You don't have to work as many hours when you do things that way. And in your personal life, you're going to prioritize the things that are most valuable there. So sometimes, and this happens a lot with people at work, they're going to say yes to something with their family because that's their highest priority. And that means missing out at something with work. This all comes back to the question of what matters most to you. And we need to have a discussion about that, right? That's a whole other thing. We can talk about values, we can talk about vision. But follow through is going to be helped when you are saying yes to things that actually matter to you. If you start saying yes to everything, then pretty soon you're not going to be able to do everything. Because you're not a superhero, you're not superhuman, you don't have an infinite amount of time. You're limited in the amount of time that you can do. So only choose to do the things that you know you can commit to and the things that are really worthwhile.
I will keep that in mind.
Good. Okay, I'm going to answer one question that you haven't asked, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this would ask, which is just how do I improve my skills? We've talked about calendaring, we've talked about saying no, and we've talked about making choices in terms of value. Where can you go to get help for that? If only there were a course that someone put together that helps you with that. Oh, wait, someone did?
I see where this is going.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. My course, Time Management Fundamentals on LinkedIn Learning, teaches you how to do it. And everything that I teach in that course, it's the same thing. If you hired me to come into your office and spend a day or two with you, I would say the exact same things to you in that meeting as I say in my course, Time Management Fundamentals. And here's a great thing. Microsoft has generously made this available for free through the end of 2025. So you can go there and take this course absolutely free if you go to davecrenshaw.com/time. davecrenshaw.com/time. Crenshaw is spelled with a C. Then you can get the full course, and that will help you with your follow-through and make you someone who is trustworthy and dependable and focused on moving toward the goals that matter to you most of all. So I hope that this has been a helpful discussion. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
And thank you very much for listening. Now go do something about what you heard.
Yeah, go do something.
You've been listening to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project, hosted by my dad, Dave Crenshaw, and produced by Invaluable Incorporated. Sound editing was done by my brother, Stratton Crenshaw. Research and assistant production by Victoria Bidez. Voiceover by me, Darcy Crenshaw. And the music is by Ryan Brady via Pond 5 licensing. Please subscribe to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. See you next time.